On this week's political figure episode, we've got a representative who's near and dear to my heart. Kind of like heartburn, or high cholesterol. My very own representative that I never wanted, Mr. Pete Stauber. Peter Allen Stauber was born May 10th, 1966 in Duluth, Minnesota. And his biography about his childhood and college experience is pretty much like just 6 paragraphs about how he played hockey in both high school and college. And like how he scored a big impressive goal in a college hockey game, and he's super impressive, and you should think he's really cool. He's pretty much just the Minnesota hockey version of Al Bundy if Al Bundy had cheated to score 4 touchdowns in a single game in the 1966 City Championship. Because apparently little Peter's big goal followed an illegal move of him dislodging the net while the opposing team was trying to score, and he just happened to get away with it. And it's incredible how much he likes to brag about this game that he refuses to talk about that particular incident of that game. And as a result of his big win, he got to go to the White House and meet the president, which inspired him to get into politics. But this was 1988, so his inspiration was literally Satan. But hey, birds of a feather. Pete Stauber cheated to win a hockey game that got him an invite to the White House to meet the president who cheated in the presidential election to win the White House. And then Peter Pecker signed a contract with the Detroit Red Wings, but I don't think he actually played at all. After that, him and his brothers opened a hockey store in Duluth called Duluth Hockey Company. During this time, he got into politics by serving on the Hermantown City Council and the St. Louis County Commission. And then in 2018, with the retirement of Rick Nolan, he decided to run for Minnesota's 8th district. My district. Speaking of my district, our most recent Let Them Eat Toast podcast episode, we interviewed Jen Schultz, who is also running for Minnesota's 8th district in this election. It's a really great episode, and I appreciate it if you guys go check it out. I'll plug that more at the end. Pete was then endorsed by Donald Trump because, why wouldn't he be? Sadly, Pete won the district, where he's remained ever since, and he has been utterly fucking useless. Little P is like a toddler, and the only word he knows is no. He's voted against literally everything. Even the shit he campaigned on to get elected, he turncoated as soon as he got into office. Like, a good portion of his district is rural Minnesota, a lot of farming communities and small businesses. And healthcare costs are a pretty big deal to a lot of us who are self-employed and don't get company health insurance. So one of the big things he campaigned on was allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices, and then immediately voted against the bill that would do just that once he got elected. But it's not his fault, he's just a gutless, spineless piece of shit with no integrity. Which is why he also voted against caps on insulin prices, and voted against capping Medicare Part D prescription drug costs, and voted against protecting individuals' health insurance coverages if they had pre-existing conditions. In fact, from my count, there's around 17 healthcare-related bills that would help people either afford coverage or maintain their coverages and protections that Pete has voted against. But hey, he's a complex, multifaceted human being, and there's more to him than just the fact that he hates that poor people have healthcare. He also hates that women have healthcare. So much so that he literally brags on his own website that he voted against the Women's Health Protection Act. And pretty much every chance he's gotten, he's voted against women having access to healthcare and reproductive services. Because apparently he's one of those creeps who thinks his place is to stand over your gynecologist's shoulder while your feet are up in the stirrups and make your healthcare decisions for you. But hey, let's not get hung up too much on how he hates women. Let's talk about how he represents his constituents. Because, come on, are women really people? Half of his constituents are straight white men, and those are the ones who count. Now, Minnesota isn't traditionally known as an oil and gas state, but that didn't seem to stop Pete from whoring himself out to oil and gas special interest and lobby groups, receiving thousands and thousands of dollars every campaign cycle to jump in bed with people like the Koch brothers. Don't worry, it's not like a gay way or anything, because of course he's voted against protecting gay people's rights to get married, against protecting trans people, or against anything that would help or protect the LGBTQ community as a whole. Pete also strongly opposes forgiving student debt because, personal responsibility, you took those loans out, you should pay them back. The audacity of you thinking you should get $10,000 worth of student loan debt forgiven. I mean, if we did that, Pete might not have been able to get the $90,000 in PPP loans forgiven for his Duluth Hockey Company. That's right, you, the taxpayer, have paid Petey, this man of integrity, $90,000 so he can sharpen skates and sell hockey jerseys. And I'm sure that's a sacrifice you were happy to make. I mean, what would this world be without Pete's shitty little hockey store? And the good news is you can tell him how proud you were to make that sacrifice for him. Not through his congressional email or anything. He never reads or responds to those. Trust me, I've tried. But Duluth Hockey Company does happen to have Google reviews. And I'm sure he'd love to hear through those Google reviews of the Duluth Hockey Company how happy you were to support his business by writing him a welfare check with your tax dollars while you struggled through the pandemic. Also, if anybody wants to update his Wikipedia page, it hasn't had much added to it since 2020. But one thing Pete has bragged about coming through for his constituents on is infrastructure. Specifically, infrastructure related to the Blatnick Bridge. This is an iconic bridge that connects Duluth, Minnesota and Superior, Wisconsin. It goes over Duluth Harbor, has an incredible view. But it's an aging bridge, and if you know anything about Minnesota bridge history, you'll know that we had a little London Bridges incident in the past that really wasn't our best moment. So Pete was quick to brag that Minnesota has secured over $1 billion in federal money to replace that bridge via an infrastructure bill that he, voted against. He left that last part out. It was a very Sarah Palin moment, you know, that I said no to that bridge to nowhere. Except it's more like I said yes to that bridge I said no to. And I don't know what's worse, voting against the stuff you campaigned on that you'd vote for, or taking credit for the shit you voted against. But good news, we don't have to choose because Pete lets us down repeatedly in both ways. Pete was also an election denier who jumped on the train about trying to get the election turned over because, you know, why the fuck wouldn't he be? He also got some criticism from some Native American groups for some derogatory remarks, you know, run-of-the-mill stuff. Pete also pretends to be a big back the blue guy, you know, he really loves the police until that involves going to the funeral of the officers who protected him on January 6th, or voting for police funding. Pete has surprisingly even voted against that, which I guess means you could say Pete has literally voted to defund the police. Just not in the good way that results in better community policing and crime prevention, the way that means police will be even less trained to deal with the situations they already suck at dealing with. And I'm sad to say that this is the twat waffle that represents me and many of the people that I love and care about. But thankfully, Congress people are up for re-election every 2 years. So we've got a chance to right our wrongs and fix our mistakes and send Pete back to sharpening skates. And we've got just the person to replace him with, Jen Schultz. She's an economics teacher with a degree in healthcare economics. She teaches at the University of Minnesota in Duluth. She was also a Minnesota state representative. She's not taking any corporate PAC money, and she is running for Minnesota's 8th congressional seat. And while I can't even get an email back from Pete about why he voted to ban TikTok, which is obviously is one of his constituents, is something that greatly affects my life, Jen not only agreed to come on the podcast episode we just posted yesterday and answer my questions directly, she drove 90 miles to do it in person in the studio with us. It was a great interview. She didn't shy away from any of the controversial topics like Israel or the TikTok ban or accepting PAC money or third parties and ranked choice voting. I both highly recommend, and it would mean a lot to me if you guys would go give it a listen wherever you get your podcast or watch it on my tube channel in video format. And if you live in Minnesota's 8th, send Pete back to selling Peter protectors to hockey players in November.